Hi and welcome to this new video where I show you how I tackle a very detailed page in Mein fantastischer Ozean or Lost Ocean by Johanna Basford. And I'm participating in the Unpopular Opinions Tag. If you're new to this channel, hi, my name is Ina. If not, welcome back. I decided on this extremely detailed and intimidating double-page spread with the mermaids for Mermaid. And now I show you how I approach it. First, I thought about how I wanted to do the background. For this double-page spread, I used soft pastels. However, since the areas here are much smaller than the spaces here, I decided against it. Soft pastels don't adhere well to colored pencils, but especially with lighter colors, discoloration still occurs. Then I colored another wallpaper page from this book. This one. Here I used watercolors, and there were already many small areas. But on the Mermaid double page spread, they are even more. And since the one page already took an extremely long time, and this is a double page spread, I decided to color the whole thing with colored pencils instead. For that, I put together a color palette. When I say it like that, I realize my reasoning is actually pretty bad. Because with this detailed double page spread, every method will take forever. Here is my color selection. I want to use the blue for the background, with the center kept lighter and the edges darker. And then this pattern will repeat with the next motif. I want to use the teal shades for the leaves on these vines, and because some of the vines and the details of the leaves are very thin, I also decided to use a glitter gel pen. I plan to use this mint tone for the water plants at the bottom, and maybe also for the corals and some of these plants. These plants I will do in the green tone from the vines, and I will use the mint here. Then I have a skin tone combination. I also have a few brown shades for the hair. At first, I thought of making it colorful, matching the mermaid's tail, but I ultimately decided to keep it brown. I've also planned to color one mermaid in purple and the other in pink, and then the next mermaid in an orange-red and one in yellow. I will repeat these colors here and there. And here I also have a few more gel pens for the fine lines on the corals and for the chains. I think with such a very detailed page, less is more. So I chose a relatively small color palette. Of course, you could use even fewer colors, but I didn't want to color all mermaids the same, to add at least a bit of variety to the picture. Now I show you how I color the first motif, and the others will be done the same way. I'll start with blue, and I'm beginning with the darkest one, ultramarine violet. By the way, I'm using the Castle Art Soft Touch pencils. But as always, if you want to color the page in the same way, you can of course use the pencils you have at home. If you want to know exactly which colors I'm using, I'll also list them in the video description. I'll begin by roughly defining the color area so I know where I want to use this very dark blue. While I was coloring in the blue, I thought to myself that it was probably an unpopular opinion to color this page. And so I thought I might answer the questions from the corresponding tag by Color Mama 360 while doing this. And that's what I'll do now. Question number 1. What's a super popular coloring book you just don't connect with? I say right away that this is just my opinion, and it's totally fine if you have a different one. We all have different preferences when it comes to coloring pages. But to answer the question, 2 books immediately come to my mind. The first is Das Land der kleinen Abenteuer by Rita Bearman. When I first saw the book, I was mostly bothered by these little note-like illustrations. I know you can write little notes there, but for that, I would personally rather use a notebook than a coloring book. I did find the other illustrations inside quite pretty though. By now, whenever I see a finished page, whether on Instagram or here on YouTube, I think they look nice. But I have absolutely no desire to color any of them myself. So I do think the illustrations are beautiful, but I simply don't feel drawn to them. I currently have Meine Reise durch Asien and Mein Winterspaziergang by Rita Bearman. If I were to get another book by her, it would not be Das Land der kleinen Abenteuer. I would rather go for Meine Reise durch Europa or Die Welt unter der Lupe zu Lande. I know that many people love the book Das Land der kleinen Abenteuer and color in it a lot. But for me, it's just not the right fit. Another book would be Lulu Mayo's Lulu's House of Wonder. It's kind of the same with that one. I like the motifs, but somehow I don't feel like coloring them. I just don't have the urge to work on those pages. From Lulu Mayo, I own A Million Little Monsters. And there are definitely other books of hers that I would rather get. Like A Million Baby Animals. But for now, though, the one I have is enough. Okay, question number 2. Do you prefer simple or highly detailed pages? As you can see, I definitely like detailed pages, but especially enjoy the mix. Meaning sometimes a very detailed page like this, and then again simpler ones. I sometimes also like it when you have more freedom with the background and you can get a bit creative there. So I would say the mix is what makes it interesting. Question number 3. Do you prefer alcohol markers or colored pencils? Definitely colored pencils. I think that's also because most of my books are double-sided. And I only have a small set of inexpensive alcohol markers. I would like to use them more, but on the other hand, I don't want to buy extra markers and more books. And also I have a few single-sided books, but I still don't use alcohol markers in them, because I just don't like it when it bleeds through the paper in this specific books. Maybe this will change in the future, but then I would probably only use them for base layers and backgrounds. I do like the even look they create. What also does put me off a bit is that alcohol markers don't contain pigments, only dyes. This makes the color fade much faster, even if the finished picture aren't exposed to light. Of course, they are just coloring pages, but somehow it still bothers me. Question 4. Is it okay to have whips or not? Of course, it's okay to have whips, but for me, it's not. If you like having many pages started and that works for you, then that's absolutely fine. But for myself, I have to say it stresses me out more than it relaxes me. There are lots of people who say they just color as long as they feel like on one picture. And then, if they feel like working on another page, they switch. But that's actually not the case for me. I never get bored with a page, so I have no reason to start another one. Last year, I tried a challenge for myself where I started many pages, and it wasn't right for me. It really stressed me out the longer those pages were left unfinished. I also became less and less motivated to work on a page the longer it stayed that way, even though at the beginning I was really excited about it. If I only start one page, I've never lost interest in it. With every page I color, I think ahead about how I want to do it. And if I have long breaks in between, I have to get back into that mindset every time. How did I want to color this object? How about that one? What was I thinking for this page? I find that much more exhausting than just finishing the page completely. On average, it takes about 23 minutes to fully concentrate again on your original complex task after an interruption. A coloring page is of course not 100% comparable to work. But if I have multiple pages started, I have to get back into each one over and over again. With just a single page, I can simply keep going. Also, I have to write down which colors I used, which again takes time. Just like getting back into the feel of the page. That's why it's simply much more comfortable for me to finish one page at a time. I leave the pencils out as long as I'm working on it, and I can fully concentrate on that one page. In contrast to this page here, where I planned a color palette beforehand, the palette often only develops while I'm coloring. So I can't just rely on a ready-made palette when I return to a page I've already started. I always have to recall how I had imagined the page in my mind. For me, it definitely means I finish one page after another much faster, because I don't have to get back into it each time I continue. I'm only ever working on that one page. Also, once I've planned the pages for the next month, my brain more or less ticks them off already and started thinking about which pages I could color in the months after that. That means my mind is always a bit in the future, not while coloring. That's when I'm in the present. But when I'm not coloring, I'm already thinking about future pages because there are so many beautiful pages to color. Started pages are in the past, and since my thoughts are mostly in the future, it's really exhausting for me to get back into what I wanted to do on an old page. I hope that makes sense. But I think this is also a personality thing, and everyone has their own preferences. Question number 5. What's one illustrator style that isn't for you? One example would be the books by Tomislav Tomic. Somehow, I only discovered him in the last 2 or 3 months through YouTube videos. But I'm just not a fan. I do like detailed pages, as you can see, but his pages are somehow even more extremely detailed for me. And they also contain so many flourishes and tiny little patterns. Okay, this page here is detailed too, but in this book, it's not like that on every page. I also think it's really cool when, as you look more closely at a page or while coloring, you keep discovering small details. But when I look at a page by Tomislav Tomic, I feel like I only see lines and first have to really focus to even recognize what the main motive is supposed to be. Maybe that's also because I'm viewing it on a screen, and it would be different if I had the book in front of me. But in any case, that's a style that just isn't for me. Another style, or rather an illustrator, is Emily Liederhol-Öberg. And I know so many people love her illustrations. I feel like her pictures are a bit of a mix between Hanna Karlsson and Maria Trolle. But that doesn't make them better for me. I would rather color in books by Hanna Karlsson or Maria Trolle, and don't really want that kind of mix. I do find her latest book better than the previous one, which is very popular. Maybe I'll change my mind in a year or two, but at the moment, I think the motives are pretty, but still not quite the kind where I feel like, yes, I really want to color this right now. Okay, question number 6. Do you think adult coloring books are getting too repetitive? Actually, only 2 books come to my mind. The newest flower book by Johanna Basford and Inklings. She has already released several flower books and also Small Victories, which is similar to Inklings. But apart from that, I wouldn't really say so. Even if there are 10 books on the same theme, like fairy tales, all the illustrators have their own style, and the books are therefore different. For example, Dark Fairy Tales by Kirby Rosanes and the Fairy Tale book by Maria Trolle are completely different, although they share the same theme and also in parts the same fairy tales. So I would say that in a few isolated cases, it might be like that. But most of the time, the books are still different enough. And if a book feels too repetitive to someone, you simply don't have to buy it. A very simple solution. You don't need to own every book. Question number 7. Are limited editions hard to find books overhyped? Here, I would also say no, because they are probably hard to find since they are just as popular and therefore sold out. The older books by Hannah Carlson come to my mind, like Seasons or Spirit Animals or Soulmates, depending on which edition you look at. They are old and still popular, and that's why they are so hard to find or no longer available, because they simply aren't reprinted, and many people have already bought them. But there are still others who would like to have them as well. And if you really want a book, you have to consider whether you are willing to spend more money on it or not. Of course, it's a pity there are many people who would like to own a book and it's not longer available. But sometimes that's just how it is. Maybe the books will be reprinted someday. What I find more problematic is when a book is artificially made scarce in order to create a hype that doesn't arise naturally. Question number 8. Are color-alongs overrated or underrated? I would say underrated. On the one hand, as a creator, I can tell you that it takes a lot of time and effort to make a color-along, whether it ends up in real time or even at its speed up. And from a viewer's perspective, I have to say I've never completely followed a color-along, but I still watch them regularly, even if not always all the way through. Simply because you can always learn something. You can watch a color along for a page you don't want to color and maybe don't even own, and still learn something from it. For example, how to color a certain type of sky or fur texture, and then you can apply that knowledge to a different page. It doesn't always have to be exactly the same page. Or you can learn how to use, for example, Neocolor tools or soft pastels or other art supplies. Especially when I started, I watched a lot of color-alongs just to see how others used certain art supplies and what techniques they had, and so on. So if you see a color-along in your subscription box or it's recommended to you, don't just look at whether you have the page and want to color it, but also whether you might learn something from it that you can use for another page. This way, you not only help yourself to develop further, but also support the creators. Question number 9. What's your opinion on overconsumption in the coloring world? I think it depends. As long as you actually use what you buy, I don't consider it overconsumption. And that also includes simply enjoying flipping through a coloring book, even if you don't color in it. However, things that are bought and never used, just standing around or even ending up being thrown away without ever being used, I would definitely call that overconsumption and criticize it. You probably also have to distinguish what we are talking about. You can still color in coloring books in 10 years or, as I said, just enjoy looking at the illustrations. But markers, for example, are something that doesn't last forever. They eventually dry out. If you buy them and don't use them and then throw them away, I would consider that overconsumption. I always try to check whether I really need things, and I prefer to sleep on it for a few nights, and then think again after a week or so if I still want it. That doesn't mean it always works for me, but most of the time it does. Maybe you could say impulse buys are the real problem. Question number 10. What's one popular supply you don't think is worth the money? I think the answer is similar to the previous question. As long as you use the product and are willing to pay the price, then it's worth its value. Art supplies can be something that someone uses and loves all the time, and then a higher price is justified. But as with the previous question, if you don't use it, it's probably not worth the hype. Since I have relatively few art supplies compared to others, and have recently only bought individual pens as additions, I honestly can't think of any product that would fit this question. I can only talk about products I've personally tested. How else could I judge them? So I can't think of any product right now. Now I come to the true or false statements. And the first one is, you don't need to swatch supplies. Of course, you don't have to swatch the pencils and other supplies. But it is definitely better, because the finish on pencils and markers, and for example watercolors, often looks different in the end than you think it will, due to the luck, the packaging, or similar factors. So if you don't want to test the colors every single time when choosing them, or risk that the colors look completely different in the end, it definitely makes sense to swatch them once. Even it takes a bit of time. Statement 2. Cute and cozy books are worth the hype. It's the same here again. Many people love these books, so for them they are probably worth the hype. For me, definitely not. I don't own any of these books and don't want to have any either. These books are also somewhat designed for coloring with alcohol markers, though of course you don't have to, but most people do. Since I already said that I use alcohol markers relatively rarely and don't have many, this is probably another reason why they are not for me. If I return to the question of whether coloring books are repetitive, I would say the cute and cozy books definitely are. Every time I see pictures from them, I have the feeling I've already seen that multiple times. Of course, they are not exactly the same pictures, but they are all very, very similar, even though there are differences. But the fact alone that they look so similar, even though they are created by different illustrators, makes them repetitive for me. Besides, I don't like the style that much. If I want something really simple, I would rather go for a children's coloring book like those from the Color Me series or my Disney ones. Statement 3. Collecting coloring books is part of the hobby. No, it's not part of the hobby. You can pursue the hobby with very few or even just one coloring book. So it's not necessarily part of it. But that doesn't mean that it is excluded either. It can be a part, but it doesn't have to be. If you weren't active on social media, most people would probably not buy so many books because they wouldn't constantly see others having books they themselves don't own yet. Statement 4. You need social media to really be able to participate in the coloring community. Yes, that is correct. If you don't count YouTube as a social media platform, since you can watch videos there without an account, you can of course still participate in things like hashtags for yourself. But if you really want to take part in the worldwide community and interact with it, you do need social media. Of course, you can also create your own local community, but then it's not really the coloring community. It's just your own small one. Statement 5. Coloring is not something you do at the same time as other stuff. False. You can do several things while coloring, like listening to music, watching YouTube videos, series or films, listening to audiobooks, talking on the phone or having a conversation. Therefore, false. However, sometimes the quiet itself can be very relaxing too. Statement number 6. Budget supplies are just as good as artist quality. Definitely not. There's a reason why it is called artist quality. Art materials in artist quality are definitely better. They often also have a better light fastness, although that doesn't play such a huge role in a coloring book. That doesn't mean, of course, that you can't achieve good results with cheaper materials. I wouldn't use the absolute cheapest, although I do use them up in certain books that were also very inexpensive. But mid-priced and even some very cheap products are definitely good. I would say especially with colored pencils, it makes a big difference. But other art materials can also be good, even if they are inexpensive. Statement number 7, and this is the last one. The quantity of completed pages compromises the quality. False. It can be that way, but it doesn't have to be. If you finish many pages very quickly, just to get them done fast, then the statement is true. But just because someone completed a lot of pages doesn't mean that the person doesn't take time or put effort in it. Therefore, I would say it depends more on how much time you have available, in combination with the number of pages, whether the quality suffers or not. It also depends on what kind of pages they are. In the time it takes me to color this double page spread, I would probably be able to complete a lot of pages in a book like Boule de Pois. So it also always depends on how big and detailed the page is. Those were all the questions and statements from the tag. I hope my opinion may have given you a new perspective. Feel free to write in the comments what your opinion is on the different questions and whether there's an aspect you think I didn't consider. Bye and see you next time.